Nile is so dried up anymore. Slave! Oh! Listen here, slave. What has gotten into you lately?
I don't like
I am the great Pharaoh of Egypt. Okay? So you need to learn to obey my rules. All right? These are the camels, all right? Not my camels. They're more superior to you. You're the working class. So get on the ground and start digging. We gotta get deep enough so the water comes back out to restore the Nile, because all of our people are gonna die. This is terrible. Ever since my father's death, Egypt has just gone downhill. I don't know what's going on. We're not appeasing the gods. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Oh God! What are you?
a demon.
Demon, why have you come to me in my sleep?
will poison the entire Nile Valley. Pharaoh Djoser, stop hitting me!
Oh no. Well, what do I tell Djoser?
The only way is you have to find the sacred ketchup in Saqqara.
The sacred ketchup. Okay. Djoser, my king. Hello. What's your name, sir?
My name is Imhotep. A demon has come to me in my sleep and has told me that you are not appeasing him, and we must
What?
Yes.
How could this be?
He said the only way to fix this, you must find the sacred ketchup in the city of Saqqara.
The sacred ketchup.
Yes.
Gosh, this can't be. I knew something was wrong to make the Nile this dry. It's been dry for decades, for generations
He
now.
must have put a curse on the Nile River.
He had to have. Oh my gosh, I thought I was doing a good job as Pharaoh. I guess not. Okay. Where do we have to go again? What city?
Saqqara.
Saqqara.
is the city.
Okay, that's pretty far from here. We better get going, because if we don't, all of our people are going to die. This is gonna be terrible. All right. This way! Let's go. This city used to be Heliopolis, thriving with civilization, and now it's empty. This is terrible. This is absolutely terrible. Our population has gone down immensely. Oh, we got some food here. Oh! All right, let's see if it's good to eat. My favorite food, centipedes. Imhotep, would you like a bite?
No.
Okay, all right. Save more for me then.
Don't you believe we should be trying to find the sacred ketchup?
Yes, we should be. I think the gods must think, Imhotep, you're some sort of like messiah, because no other slave has ever been spoke to. I have to trust the gods, because if I don't, I mean, this whole kingdom is going to be, within the next year or sooner, will be doomed, and we might even die as well. The city of Saqqara is just beyond this reach of plants, but it's dangerous to go in here because there are giant praying mantises here.
Oh no.
I love eating praying mantises, but they will kill me if I get too close to them. So what we need to do is somehow strategically get through this wood. Saqqara is where the old kings, my ancestors, are buried. Society's dying. We've burnt down a village. Let's get in this boat. We're gonna get in this boat and sail to Saqqara.
Yeah, the Nile's dried up. There's no water.
Well, it'll work. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. This, Imhotep, This is the palette of no touchy.
Oh, sorry.
This is only for the pharaohs to possess. This was given,
beautiful.
this was passed down through generations. The very first pharaoh of Egypt, Narmer, was able to find this palette shortly after the conquest between Lower and Upper Egypt, and every pharaoh ever since him has possessed this palette. It keeps the power within the family. So it's very important that no one touches it besides the pharaoh and the god of the sky, Horus. And there is the great city of Saqqara. Let's go! The sacred ketchup will soon be mine. All right, Imhotep, help me get off this.
Ah, bring me!
Oh no! Don't worry, Imhotep. This isn't the end of the world yet. Because luckily we have this pumpkin right here.
What is the pumpkin supposed to do?
Their only weakness, purple pumpkins. The only way to kill it. Don't get too close though. Try to hit it. Kutakato! No! Oh, we got another shot. Here we go. Woo! Ah, we got him.
Yeah.
Let's go! That's what I'm talking about. All right, the ketchup shouldn't be too far. The palette is destined to this oasis right here. This is the last oasis in Egypt. It's got to be somewhere around here.
What is it saying?
Should be somewhere in these weeds. See them around? Ah! Here it is! The great and prosperous original tomato ketchup!
Yeah!
And with this power, the Nile Valley will be restored with the power. All right, Imhotep, this is very important. I am the greatest pharaoh in the history of Egypt, as we all know.
This is true, this is true.
And so my tomb needs to be the most grand tomb that Egypt has ever seen. And in this city of Saqqara, where we found the ketchup, is how we're going to appease the gods if we lay my remains here. So this is the crypt that my ancestors are buried in, the mastaba. This is, and mine needs to be a grand version of these. So as you can see, we have the hieroglyphs inside, we have the chapel and all this stuff. So what I need you to do is to design me an idea for a grand tomb.
What if, Djoser, we put the burial sites together and created a pyramid?
Oh, I see.
A
So
grand
we
pyramid.
stack them on top of each other.
Precisely.
So these are going to be made out of mud clay?
No, this is going to be made out of grand stone. The finest
That is
stone.
a great idea. This will last for thousands of years.
Yes, it will.
So this project, we're going to have me, my tomb, in the very bottom of the crypt, the very top of 6 layers of mastabas. This is going to be magnificent because I don't have much longer left. I've been pharaoh for a long time, and it's about time for my son to take over. So as I die, I think, Imhotep, we better get started on this project. You and your men can get started on this project as soon as possible. That way it's done by the time I die. Grand ceremony. I have the rightful honor of being the very first pharaoh in Egyptian history to bestow upon you the title of Chief Architect of Egypt. So from this point on, every single pharaoh will reside you as their architect and minister of the high priests, and they will worship you as if you were a god for the rest of the history of ancient Egypt.
I thank you, Djoser.
Now, before I die, we need to get this pyramid ready to construct. That way we have my grand tomb, and Egypt restores its prosperity, and the Nile gets back to the way it was with fertile crops on the water. Hello everyone, and today we are kicking off the Egyptian New Kingdom with Pharaoh Phriday, episode 3. Welcome everyone. Today we are going to be talking about the third dynasty of ancient Egypt and the very start of what is known as the Old Kingdom, the very first period in Egyptian history where Egypt is exceptionally prosperous. Now, as you know, with the first two dynasties in Egyptian history took place during the early dynastic period. Egypt was pretty unstable and not very powerful under those two dynasties. However, once we get to Dynasty 3 in 2686 BC, things start to change. Now, Dynasty 3 was a relatively short dynasty, only lasting about 70 years from 2686 to 2613 BC. A lot of the pharaohs are not 100% concrete. Before we get started, as always with these Egyptian videos, I want to get the quick ancient history disclaimer out of the way. Basically, these events took place about 4,000 years ago, and basically there are many historical documents that were written hundreds and thousands of years after this stuff took place. And we're not 100% sure if these pharaohs existed or not. We're pretty certain on these that they existed. We're not too sure on the order or the time period where they ruled. We don't know too much about them. However, we do know a lot more about the Old Kingdom pharaohs than the early dynastic pharaohs and even the first and second and third intermediate period pharaohs. We do know quite a bit about the Old Kingdom compared to most of the others because of how prosperous Egypt was. Now, we don't exactly know all the order and 100% the pharaohs from the third dynasty. Most scholars and Egyptologists consider there to be 5 pharaohs in Dynasty 3, so that's what we're going to be going off of today. There are many different lists out there listing every single pharaoh in chronological order. We've talked about them in the past. The Turin Canon, the Abydos King List, the Palermo Stone, they all share the common link of every single pharaoh in Egyptian history in chronological order. The only problem with those are none of them are the same. Basically, each and every one of those lists has a mix-up of different pharaohs with different names and different orders, and there's some that are on one that aren't on the others, or vice versa. So it's very difficult to tell. However, what most Egyptologists have discovered is that the very first pharaoh of the third dynasty was one of the greatest, in my opinion, probably the greatest pharaoh of the Old Kingdom, and kicked off the entire thing. Pharaoh Djoser. Djoser is also known as Djoser in some scenarios. He was very, very famous and worshipped as a hero for almost the rest of Egyptian history, even thousands of years after his death. Let's run through some things that Djoser did for Egypt. Basically, he succeeded, the Dynasty 3 started mainly because of him. He succeeded his father, Khasa-Khemui. His father was the very last pharaoh from Dynasty 2, Khasa-Khemui, who died in 2686 BC, leaving the throne to Djoser. Djoser, as you know, is the very first pharaoh to be buried inside of a pyramid. Pyramids, as you know, with Egyptian history, did not exist before this. Djoser's pyramid, standing at 205 feet tall, is the very first pyramid ever built in Egyptian history. It is in Saqqara, the step pyramid of Saqqara, which you can still visit today. It is still standing. Although not as tall and grand as the pyramids built later on during Dynasty 4 and 5 at Giza, Djoser's pyramid still ranks within the top 10 largest pyramids ever built. Now, why did Djoser get a pyramid? Why did he get such a grand pyramid? It wasn't just because he invented that ideology. He was a very revolutionary pharaoh for Egypt. He's the founder of the Old Kingdom, for one. He has a full-size statue located at, it's still in the museum at Cairo today. He led many military expeditions in the Sinai Plateau, and he found many valuable minerals there as well. When Egypt first became into Dynasty 3, Egypt was not doing very well. There was a very bad famine going on and a drought in the Nile River when Djoser took the throne. And Djoser worked his best. He built a bunch of temples. He was obsessed with building things. Built temples, revived Egypt. And he was ruling during the flood of the Nile, which was very, very prosperous for Egypt. Basically brought it back to full. And he basically conquered the rest of the Egyptian territory that had been under dispute during the Second Dynasty. And none of this, his building expeditions, none of his building architecture could have been possible without the help of his chief architect and chief minister, Imhotep. Imhotep, as you saw in the live action film, supposedly was having a dream, and supposedly the god of death, or one of the gods, threatened to poison the Nile River because Djoser was not appeasing him. So he goes to Djoser and helps find this. Although the sacred ketchup did not exist, Djoser in return built many, many temples to allow for the Egyptians to rise up and kind of worship him. And he kind of saved Egypt from the drought and was basically known as a hero from that point forward. Imhotep, going back to him, he was the architect, and Djoser put him in charge of being the architect to design the very first pyramid. Now, before Djoser died, and before Djoser's reign, every single previous pharaoh had been buried in a crypt known as a mastaba, which was kind of like a rectangular shaped building that they were buried underground underneath it. There was a chapel and stuff like that. Imhotep had the idea of, instead of having Djoser buried in a mastaba, in Abydos, like most of the other pharaohs was, he was buried in Saqqara. Imhotep had previously been from the city of Heliopolis. But the idea of stacking 6 mastabas, one after another, on top of each other to form a giant colossal structure. This theory was that Djoser's body, since his sarcophagus was laid in the middle of it, to be, for him, Djoser's soul to be closer to the heavens when he died. So that was the goal with that. He was buried with many, many treasures. What is amazing about the Djoser's pyramid, it's not how tall the structure is, which is amazing. It's the crypt beneath the pyramid. Djoser's sarcophagus is located about 90 feet below the ground. And I watched a documentary on Djoser's pyramid. There's like 9 miles of maze underneath the pyramid. And Imhotep designed it in this way, in this fashion, so that grave robbers would not steal Djoser's body, because Djoser was a very loved pharaoh. And a lot of the pharaohs their bodies have been stolen. However, he was buried in the middle of that, and with a bunch of jewels. And obviously, during the Roman period, sadly, maybe the Middle Ages, somebody was able to break in to Djoser's pyramid. They stole all of the so-called grave goods, such as the gold, the turquoise, copper, and all of his belongings that were buried in there, and even, yes, his body. So we don't know where the body of Djoser is today. It was probably stolen, most likely during the Roman conquest, because that's when a lot of things were stolen. However, the pyramid itself and the structure does still exist today, although it is kind of falling apart at the seam. Egyptologists and archaeologists are trying their best to make it stay still up. So that is very revolutionary about Djoser. And what's fascinating is Djoser did all of that stuff within a 19-year period. He was only pharaoh for 19 years. But he started the precedent of the pyramid building. Although Imhotep did live much longer than Djoser and actually lived within the next several pharaohs. And he died under the last pharaoh of Dynasty 3. Imhotep designed almost all of the pyramids for the Dynasty 3 pharaohs. After Djoser died, he was succeeded by his son Sekhemkhet in about 2650 BC. Sekhemkhet, not a lot is known about him. In fact, we didn't even know where his tomb was until about 70 years ago in the 1950s. Before that, all we knew of him was like his symbols on rocks. That's about all we knew about Sekhemkhet. He was only pharaoh for about 7 years. It's hard to, in history, when you're coming in after a huge, very successful head of state or king or monarch or anything like that, it's going to be hard for him to make some ground. And it was very hard for Sekhemkhet, especially because he was not pharaoh for very long. His pyramid did turn to ruins because he did die before the completion of his pyramid. He died and they only had the bottom mastaba put in there. And his pyramid was actually supposed to be another step pyramid, actually meant to be 80 feet taller than Djoser's pyramid. So had it got finished, it would have been 80 foot taller than Djoser's pyramid, which is pretty incredible, especially for that time in archaeological history. Also designed by Imhotep himself. Now, Sekhemkhet's pyramid, sadly, all the renovations were put to rest after he died, and they didn't discover his tomb until 1951. And they went inside, it was all covered up by sand. So once the Egyptologists went in there, they were able to get inside of the crypt of Sekhemkhet, and they found an unopened sarcophagus that hadn't been opened for about 4,500 years. And they busted it open, and the body was missing. There was no body. So they initially thought that he was been buried somewhere else, but it's definitely possible that he could have been stolen as well. People think that he was buried somewhere else and not in there. I personally think his body was most likely stolen due to the sarcophagus actually being in there, but there was no grave goods at all in his pyramid, his unfinished pyramid. So, also buried in Saqqara, but sad story with Sekhemkhet there. It's basically in ruins, a necropolis complex there. Next up is Nebka. Now, Nebka is a pretty interesting pharaoh because a lot of Egyptologists think that he was actually the first pharaoh from Dynasty 3, and there are a couple reasons why. Nebka, not much is known about him, but he is pretty more connected to the Dynasty 2 pharaohs than he is to the Dynasty 3 pharaohs, and he was actually buried in a mastaba, not a pyramid. He's the only pharaoh from the 3rd dynasty to not be buried in a pyramid, which make a lot of people think that he came before Djoser, because Djoser was the first pharaoh to be buried in a pyramid. But some think that he just didn't want to be buried in a pyramid. However, most Egyptologists today have settled on the fact that Djoser is most likely the first pharaoh of Dynasty 3, being the son of Khafre. Just lines up better with that. But it is very unlikely for a pharaoh after Djoser and Sekhemkhet to not be buried in a pyramid. So I can see where the argument's coming from, but that's just kind of how that was. After Nebka, you get a pharaoh known as Kaba. Now, Kaba we know almost nothing about at all. His scenario is kind of like Sekhemkhet's. His pyramid was never completed, but there is traces of the pyramid, and sadly, we don't know where his body was. All of the pharaohs from Dynasty 3, we have no idea where their bodies are. We have no traces of anything. We just know their initial burial places, but it was rough during the Roman period. A lot of things were stolen from these guys' graves. However, the pyramids that they were laid to rest in initially are still there, which is very cool. Kaba is only written on a few rocks. His name is written on a few rocks. That's the only reason we know about Kaba. And it is written on the Palermo stone. His tomb is basically crumbled, but he's buried at the city of Zayet el Erin. He was kind of one of those guys that liked to build a lot of small things. He built a lot of like step pyramids and things like that. But that didn't go on until his successor, Huni. Huni was the last pharaoh from Dynasty 3, and he was pretty famous. Basically, his pyramid does still exist, and it was finished. It was another step pyramid. It's called the Midam Pyramid, and it's also at Saqqara, I believe. He was a big builder. He loved to just build things. He was one of those guys that liked to do. He didn't have many grand architectural achievements, and Imhotep did die during the reign of Huni. He built a lot of small step pyramids all around the cities in Egypt. And his pyramid is really, really weird shaped. One of the most odd shaped pyramids in Egypt. But it's believed that the first pharaoh of Dynasty 4, Seneferu, kind of made some renovations to the pyramid after Huni died, because he was not a big fan of Huni. Actually, Seneferu did not like most of the pharaohs from Dynasty 3 and tried his best to erase them from history. But Huni was very well known at the time of his death, so he is buried in that pyramid there, which is pretty cool. Huni, just like Djoser, he was the closest one to Djoser after his reign. Probably the most famous pharaoh from Dynasty 3 besides Djoser. But then again, not too much is known about Huni. Most of the pharaohs from Dynasty 3, a lot of them has been lost from history, but we do have the pyramids that they were building, which is very cool. So that is every single pharaoh from the third dynasty kicking off the Old Kingdom. We have now gotten to archaeological advancements. These pyramids still exist to this day. With the leadership of Djoser and Imhotep, this would not have been possible. Imhotep was also later on, during the late period, worshipped as the god of medicine and healing, which was very crucial for that. Imhotep is a very honorable position because Imhotep is one of the few, if not maybe the only, non-pharaoh to actually become a deity, which is actually become a god, which is very revolutionary. Imhotep, he was a very intelligent man. The god of medicine, and he's considered to be kind of the father of medicine, the father of architecture, because think about it. If it wasn't for Imhotep, we wouldn't have skyscrapers today or anything like that, because the pyramids were the ones that inspired them. All the great pyramids at Giza not have been possible without Imhotep. But yeah, Imhotep lived many years before the Greek philosophers that started medicine, supposedly. Imhotep was kind of the father of all of that. So, with that, I want to thank you guys for watching. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe. Let me know what you thought about Dynasty 3. Who is your favorite pharaoh from Dynasty 3? I know a lot of you guys are going to say Djoser. But I don't know. Maybe Sekemket, somebody's favorite. Anyway, that is going to conclude everything about Dynasty 3. And we'll see you guys next time for Dynasty 4. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And I will see you guys next time. Goodbye. Wah! Let's go, Old Kingdom.